Right, welcome back. We are in Embu County, number 14, the County of Opportunities, where we are talking about availability of food, social protection, and also what the public-private partnership can do when it comes to training of farmers and ensuring that production of food is enough for the country. And that is why we are having this conversation on this important day of World Food Day. So let me bring in the PS, and this question I pose it to you because you are within the Ministry of Agriculture, and to mitigate the pandemic's impact, effect on food and agriculture, what can both the national and the county governments do to meet the immediate needs for the vulnerable population?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think the worst part is over. Kenya has a population of about 1.5 million who are very food insecure. And these are mostly in the northern part of the country, northern and northeastern and partly eastern. And they are known, they are in a database, and they are supported through mostly cash transfers, whether there is a crisis or not, because this is a known situation. What we did during the COVID situation is that those who are affected, those who fell down, were identified and also supported through cash transfer. But I think the ministry also, through a program of supported by the African Development Bank, we moved to introduce what are known as kitchen gardens. So we are spreading around the country to create 1 million kitchen gardens so that the very vulnerable can also grow their own food, including in urban areas. We have a model kitchen garden at the ministry, but we will also have them across the country, and we'll be distributing seed. Our partners are also distributing seeds and other inputs that will enable the community to grow from below. But for the larger food security answers, we are implementing our agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy, where we're working with smallholder farmers by making sure that they have what they need in terms of inputs at affordable rates. Most of these inputs are zero rated or tax exempt, so that production can go on. Like, for example, this year already, our estimates show that we are going to have a good crop of maize, around 44 million bags, which is equivalent to what was obtained last year. Even the production for exports has gone up by almost 20 billion, despite the COVID. So the farmers responded very well, and Kenyans responded very well, and the situation is under control. Our targets for the Big Four is by 2022, we cut down those food insecure by 50%, so that we incrementally decrease that number, mostly in northern and northeastern Kenya, where the conditions are rather tough.
Right, and from your statement, I like the fact that you're talking about also the private sector coming in there, but we shall be delving into that later on. But it's good that we have someone from, from the county, and Dr. Jamlek, the same question that I posed to the PS, what is the county government doing?
Well, thank you. I want to plug in and engage this conversation and say, as the theme talks of togetherness, you realize that the county governments are co-working with other stakeholders to ensure that at least the common person or the vulnerable and the pockets of poverty, where we have people who are really depressed, get food. And what most counties did at Embu specifically, to be specific, is that we mobilized the communities during the COVID time because of the crisis, and the communities were able to give food that we distributed through the office of the county commissioner to various vulnerable groups that actually are nothing to take. So people donated foods, people donated different things that were required. Mm-hmm. But for sustainability element in that, you realize that as a county government, what we're trying to do is to ensure that at least we train our people on how really to grow food crops that grow very fast and that definitely can be used. And then there is the problem of that they grow food and it goes bad. So we're also plugging in the element of post-harvest loss. So that at least
Dr. I'd like you to just raise your mic a bit so that we can hear what you're saying clearly.
Yeah, so I'm saying that...
Just raise your mic a bit.
Yeah, I'm saying that there is a lot of loss of food because of post-harvest losses, which is attributed so many factors. So we're also training our people already, how do you convert whatever food you have into material that can stay longer. Mm-hmm. Perishability is reduced. So that's some of the things we're doing. Then for Embu, the lower part is a bit dry. And what we are doing is we are doing the water pans. We are also doing some, there is irrigation project that is coming up, Rupingazewero, which is actually going to transform the livelihoods of those people because they are going to engage with a lot of farming.
All right. And before I pose my next question, let me just read what I got. I was just going through FAO's website, and let me just read what they wrote. Preserving access to safe and nutritious food is and will continue to be essential part of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly for poor and vulnerable communities who are hardest hit by the pandemic and resulting economic shocks. The reason as to why I'm reading this quote that I got from FAO's website, it's because I'm really wondering how can both national and county governments build on people's resilience when it comes to food security and uplift those affected by COVID-19? I'd like to hear from you as a young person, Caroline. My question is, how can both national and county governments, because we've heard it from the PS, we've heard it from CEC, the Minister of, CEC Agriculture in Embu County, what the national and the county government is doing. And so I pose this question to you, how can both national and county governments build on people's resilience when it comes to food security and uplift those affected by COVID-19? And here I'm talking about the young people.
Thank you. I'd say the national and county government should help the youth with probably seedlings, or probably help them with equipment to do processing, because we experience a lot of post-harvest losses in this country. At least in fruits and vegetables, we experience about 51% of post-harvest losses. And that is something that the youths can do. We can dry the fruits, we can dry the vegetables, make snacks, make flours from the dried vegetables and fruits, so that then we can, the impact will not be as huge as it is at the moment, because there are some youths who don't have work, and that is something that can help them build their livelihoods from it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And Leah, I know this might be a bit technical for you because it's not your field, but when you talk about, let's talk about social protection. And social protection, I believe, is also what the PS talked about, giving the vulnerable families money, the cash transfers, just to try and help them. But is social protection the only way, or rather the solution to uplifting those who've been affected by COVID-19 when it comes to nutritious food?
No, Brenda, that's a very good question for me, actually, because social protection is very important, and government does a lot to make sure that all the vulnerable populations don't go hungry. But that's not the only way. The other way that we do it as an organization is actually to make food more affordable and accessible. We do this by supporting the supply chains. That's what Hamisi and Caroline are just talking about. How can we make sure that food is not being lost, is getting to the market from the farm, is being preserved, is being processed, and is being availed to the nearest market, to the poor, and they can afford it. The more that we can support, especially the private sector as a huge supply chain player, to make sure that food moves with little or limited loss, the cheaper that food can get. That means, besides social protection, or whatever other support that vulnerable populations get to buy food, then they can still be able to afford food from probably their other little incomes. So supporting, actually strengthening the supply chain, bringing the actors together, especially the business, because you will be surprised. 70% of people living in the low-income rural populations buy food. 95% of those who live in the urban centers buy food. So that means we have to do something about this supply chain that is being so controlled by the private sector. That is what people like Caroline are doing. And we need to join hands together, government, other players, so that we can support them to do exactly what she's saying, to make sure the food is not being lost, it's being processed, it's being preserved, it's being accessed by the poor at the most affordable price possible.
And Jerusha, within the potato sector, if I may put it that way, do you think farmers within the, farming potatoes also need the cash transfer? And if they do, should it be conditional or not conditional? And the reason as to I'm asking you this, it's because we have seen at times when farmers are given the social protection, they've been put in the social protection program during this time of COVID-19. There's so many challenges financially. So if a farmer is given that money to go and try boost the farming activity, clearly I'd look at it in terms of I've not paid rent, my daughter or my son is sick, let me use this on that.
Let me start by saying, as an international research institution, along the agri-food seed system, we actually right from the start, that is the input supplier, because we supply in terms of technologies or in terms of innovations or practices. Now, for these farmers to be able to produce, like the potato farmers, as you've asked, whether it is sweet potato or potato, they were, of course, affected by the COVID-19. Just like any other farmers, they were affected. And therefore, if they have to be, social protection is definitely important to them, for them to come out as a short term. But of course, in the long term, is you want to remove them out of the poverty situation or the difficult situation by providing them with the technology. So for farmers, sometimes it is more important to give them the inputs that they require rather than the cash. The cash might be needed maybe for a very, very short term, but if they have to get the input, and sometimes like the COVID-19 made it very difficult for them to access the inputs. So if they can be helped to get access to the input, that is more critical to them for the farmers to be able to produce.
In fact, my next question was, I was actually going to pose it to you, and it's good you've touched on matters fertilizers just before I bring in Hamisi. And we are talking about social protection, yes. However, we need to look at it in terms of social cash transfers to buy seeds and fertilizers as a way of promoting food security.
Can I respond to that?
Okay,
yes,
okay.
Because the ministry developed a system called the e-voucher. The e-voucher means the farmer pays 60%, the government pays 40%. 200,000 farmers will be supported through that way, vulnerable ones, in the value chains that we have prioritized. And this is not a cash transfer, but basically we have a partnership with agrovets, Safaricom, KCB, and the government, and the farmer. So the farmer, once they go to the agrovet and they pick what they want to buy.
So this is paid directly to agrovet?
Yeah, so that is the innovation that has come into that space, because before most of the fertilizer was getting lost on the way. So we have addressed that, and for the future that issue is taken care of. We just need to have more resources so that we can reach more farmers. And most of our development partners have also embraced the e-voucher. So like IFAD, I'm not sure how FAO is doing their outreach to the ones they're supporting. Of course, private sector players have come in. They're also giving direct fertilizer and also seed. For example, Bayer donated seed for the counties that are in this season, this short rain season. And also Yara donated fertilizer as a part of their contribution to the COVID response.
Right.
So it was not just a government effort alone, but development partners, private sector, and of course government. And I think this way we'll be able to really support those who need support without any losses of cash or material on the way.
All right. So Jerusha, is that the best way to go? Pay directly to the supplier, then the farmer just goes to pick it?
Yes, that is important, especially the co-sharing part of it, so that there is ownership and they feel it belongs to them. Because sometimes when you give them free, it becomes what you call handout syndrome, where it really doesn't belong to them. It just belongs to the development partner, or it belongs to the government. So when you have the e-voucher, first of all, they go through the Ministry of Agriculture Extension staff, who identify that this is actually a farmer who has so much land and who is able to plant so much potatoes or so much maize, and they require so much fertilizers. So therefore, it also becomes checks and balance on who actually receives, and when they receive, if they are going to pay, then they are going to pay for something they need. And therefore, it makes sure that they are going to use whatever they have received. And let me just add something also from our end, that is on fertilizer. But one of the key inputs for production is seed. And I think that is quite critical that they have the seed. And what we are doing at our organization is to supply the starter material, whether it is sweet potato, clean material for starting the clean potato vines or the seed itself. And so we partner with a private partnership who produce the seed, clean certified seed, and make sure that these farmers have access. Right. And sometimes they are very fast. Seed is a little bit different. Maize is quite close. You can get maize in any agro input. But right. something like potatoes, you have to travel very far. Right. So we kind of support them to be able to get that. And right. that is quite critical, the input right from at the start of the agri-food system.
All right, and it's good you've even answered the next question that I wanted to ask about, mapping out the vulnerables in the society when it comes to farmers. But Hamisi, when it comes to food security, let's talk about the solutions that people and farmers need to zero in on.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me clarify on something which a narrative that we should, I think, speak to Kenyans, especially when it comes to how do you caution farmers themselves. And we need to understand that farmers, first and foremost, are also consumers. They also eat food. So they want to do farming, and this is the narrative we are creating. Again, let's do that farming as a business. So it becomes like any other business of somebody selling electronics, which we were trying to caution because of COVID-19. So we say your business was destroyed in one way or the other. So all those kind of safety nets should also touch those farmers if they were doing their business, their farming as a business. That's a different thing from when the government is actually doing social protection to the hungry, who will also include farmers. When you look at the Kenyan population, you almost have 80% of these people are farmers. So you are not going to get them out. So let's get those two and clarify so that we don't leave our farmers out saying that because they grow food, we just will give them seeds and we feel they're okay. No, that's like cautioning also a car business, a car hire business. Yeah. But let's do the issue of food. Okay. That's one. Then there is another point I wanted just to add to what I think the PS has explained in terms of the e-voucher system. I think they are now making it even much better, expanding it, and we are supporting the ministry on that as FAO, in what we call Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management Information System, simply called KEMIS, where the whole aspect here is we will have the three key tenets there: the farmer, the bank, the agro-dealers. You go put there, the government will tell you what they support you with and everything else. The bank is already fixed there with your account. All you need to do is redeem a voucher. Now what we can be discussing are the benefits of giving you a voucher instead of cash. And so that's another story for another day altogether. But coming now to your question, we got several of these solutions that are there. And picking from what colleagues have said, one key thing that we shouldn't forget is capacity building. We need to build the capacity of our people to be able to understand what they're doing, get to know the intrigues of what they're doing, and therefore do it right. That's where it starts. Once people are capacity built, I can tell you they can be able to maneuver, even wiggle through the difficulties and be able to reach the other side. The other thing would be, when we still talk about the togetherness, there are things about agriculture production and the chain that we are talking about that really are not on the hands of the people who produce food. Roads, for example, are very critical to move food from the farm even to the market itself. How much do we waste just because our roads are bad and the lorries that are going there? If you had 20 heads of cabbage, you reach the the market with only 10. It's as simple as that. And probably after selling in the evening, you have 10 heads left of cabbage, and you know that this is going to get into waste or get spoiled after 2 days. And these people don't have storage facilities. And these are things that probably are beyond the farmers themselves. Right. So we need to fix also that infrastructural aspect of market as well. So it's not just the market because the demand is there. Demand is there, people will eat it. But there is the infrastructural aspect of the market that we also need to do. Right. I'll just give you a simple example. I know you want to move. In the US, they used to call it food deserts. People have food, but they are able to map those specific areas where food is there but it's not nutritious. So there's a lot of food for these people to eat. And because lack of nutrition, then they start being obese or other aspects of it. Now, when you go to the market nearby, you find a lot of vegetable, which probably is what those guys need, getting into waste because we are closing the market time, nobody has bought this, and this vegetable is going to waste.
All right.
So they've formed a system where you'll find they use people, some interns, volunteers, who will just come and collect it. Because basically, if there is no other market until the next week, vegetable is going to go to waste. They will collect it in a good system, put it in a lorry, and take it to the food desert.
All right.
And those guys will get vegetable.
All right.
So small things here that are supposed to help us, and we need to do this.
All right. So, Daktari, what can county governments focus on, when it comes to food security? And when I'm asking this question, I'm thinking about looking at the counties in terms of what they focus on. When I think of Nyandarua, I'm looking at potato farming. When I think of Kirinyaga, I'm looking at rice. When I think of Embu, I'm looking at macadamia.
Thank you. I think that's a very good question, and flagging on to what Hamisa said concerning food security and the like, we need to think more on infrastructure because of the market. Then storage facilities, as you have talked about, because many times, as you have said, that if they are the vegetables, they require cold chains, which can make sure that the life of the food is a bit elongated, or is extended. Then the other thing that the counties really need to do is to invest more, to put some money which can support the youth fund. And the youth are very critical in turning loud agriculture. Because one, they have the energy. Two, they really want to do it. Three, they don't have the work. So if we can give the youth fund, then we support the youths in giving them the right knowledge, and also that's capacity building, and also giving them support in terms of infrastructure, in terms of materials. Then they will be able to eventually, and plugging in institutions like Carlo, that's very good in research and the like, then they can be guided on which crops to grow in a particular area. You have pointed out very, very clearly. In Embu, you have macadamia. You have avocados that are coming up. You have green grams, the lower side of Embu, which are a bit dry and the like. So what we need to do as a county government, and that's what we are doing, is the element of supporting these people based on what they are doing. You plug into the indigenous activities that people are doing, and we improve on the indigenous things that they are doing. So those counties where people are growing cassava, can we be able to give them the best varieties of cassava that are weather resilience, that are pest resistance, and all those kind of a thing that already they know that cassava does well here. So what we need to do is just improve and plug in on what they do and transform the indigenous knowledge into modern knowledge so that they can increase production. The land mass is decreasing because of so many other factors. So now that with the decreased land mass, agricultural land is declining, what do? We need now to figure out how can we boost production in limited land area. Thank you.
We're about to take a short commercial break once again, but then let's delve into private partnership. And before we take that short commercial break, I'd like to pass this question to Leah. How can the private sector engage or invest in agriculture?
Very interesting question, and that's what we at the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition actually dream about. Investing in agriculture and nutrition is investing in what we call the gray matter, the brain. As I already said, we eat most of our food from the market, from the private sector. They buy the food from the farmers, supply it, travel it, move it, and as my colleagues have said, along the road, it is wasted, it is contaminated, etc. So we actually really need to have businesses invest. Businesses sometimes are seen as the enemy because they are the same ones who advertise, sell to us food that is not safe and nutritious. It is high in fat, high in sugar, it is easy to eat, easy to consume. So we need to support businesses actually to invest in processing, retailing, supplying, making affordable, available, safe, and nutritious food. Because the more they can do that, unfortunately, we can't turn a blind eye to that because we continue to eat from businesses, from the private sector.
So you're saying that these manufacturing companies, the food manufacturing companies, need to involve all the private sectors within the food industry from the processing stage to the last stage?
In fact, I'm saying it needs to be all the way from the farm, because even our smallholder farmers are more or less doing business. Many of them just don't plan to eat. They plan to sell. And my colleagues and our peers has also talked here about food safety. So we need to involve everybody on the supply chain to make sure that the private sector, businesses, and as I said earlier, the different food system actors, government is a key one in supporting with an enabling environment, the policy framework that government has already put in place. One of the things is to make it easy for businesses to know what is required of us, but also for government to make sure, because some know but don't want to keep the rules. So they break the rules and end up bringing on our table something that is not safe and nutritious for our consumption. So again, we ask government to make sure that they enforce amongst businesses to follow the rules.
All right.
Brenda, just 1 minute. To add to that, just
yes.
very, very fast. You know, there's a law in this country, Cap 254,
Yes.
which really emanated from the Food and Nutrition Security Policy. And the Ministry of Agriculture really pushed this, and it went through. And one of the key things in that law is fortification of food. And where the millers are supposed to be accountable to what they do, and they've even been given guidelines on how to really do that. So the question is, sometimes also government has done some bit, but the private sector, what I think probably we could be discussing here, where the challenge is, why aren't they also rising to the occasion and be able to support, or it's just the issue of making money and profit, so they don't want to also look at the other side of it, of building our nutrition.
All right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's good that we have the PS for Agriculture, Professor Amadi Boga. You'll be responding to to Leah's and her missus' concern, you know, in terms of involving everyone and when it comes to safety of the food. So you'll respond to that after the short commercial break I'm taking right now here on KTN News.